Welcome to the Endurance Drive podcast.
Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Katie.
Hey, Katie. It's hot out there.
It is hot out there. And I was actually thinking on my run this morning, as I was getting ready for this podcast, that we should probably do a quick refresher on the JAHI, J-A-H-I, the Jim Anderson Heat Index, because if we have new listeners and people have not been totally plugged into what this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. And so if you're new, the Jim Anderson Heat Index, I hope it's okay if I explain what it is. It is
Yes.
You take the temperature and you take the humidity and you add them together. And if that number is really high, it's really, really hard to run or bike or do anything outside. And I think the point is that even if it's only like 70 degrees out, if it's 90% humidity, that is a much, much harder day than 80 degrees and 20% humidity. And so isn't like if you say if it's over 140 or something, that's where we start to see pretty serious performance consequences?
Yeah, I think it's so. Yeah, so the Jim Anderson Heat Index is this is a real feel thing, and I don't know how meteorologists do it. All the science stuff we just take it and add it. And I think about 140 to 160 is where it starts to, and it's a very steep curve, right? You hit 140, it's not linear. It just goes really steep. So think about this: like 70 degrees outside, 70% humidity. That gets uncomfortable, right? It's just starting to get to that period, like, I'm struggling a little bit here. Throw in 80% humidity, 70 and 80, 70 degrees, 80% humidity, that starts to get nasty. And then today, I think, Katie, it's probably 80 something with 80%. So it's 160 plus today. And today I was just out doing intervals on my bike. I looked down and the sweat on my forearms the water came up, sweat came up and was not evaporating. So I looked down and said, okay, well, I'm not cooling anymore because evaporation is what it takes to cool your body, right? And it wasn't going anywhere. So I was like, okay, this is really, really hot. So that 160, I think it's the real danger zone, but it starts to get kind of in that uncomfortable danger zone. Like you start to see performance degrade, I think at like around 140.
Yeah, and I think the point is, like, definitely check what that humidity is before you go out. I had the experience this morning where it was 80 degrees and it was 80% humidity, so that's a 160. And if you walk out the door, it doesn't necessarily feel terrible, and I think that's where I made the decision, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the track, I'm gonna run some intervals. I didn't have a super hard workout, but I was gonna do a little bit of work. And I got out there, and within 1 or 2 intervals, it was no longer even a smart situation or what felt like a super safe situation where, again, like, you're getting a little bit lightheaded, the sweat's not evaporating. And it ended up, me kind of shuffling back towards home and being like, I think I actually have to get like an emergency Gatorade right now. Like here I am a mile from my house and I'm going to find some store. And quick sidebar on this, I didn't have my phone because I was trying to like be zen and unplug, which is a challenge of the week that we sometimes do, no phone. And then I was like, oh my God, I don't even have a way to pay for a Gatorade.
Oh no.
And challenge of the week. I don't know if it's challenge week, but I was like, hold on. I think when I got my new Garmin probably a year ago, I installed Garmin Pay on there and I was like, I wonder how this even works. And I'm like sifting through all the menus, like, standing still at 130 heart rate, sweating profusely. And then I realized that I had Garmin Pay, walked in, grabbed a Gatorade, paid with my watch. And I was like actually really happy. So it all worked out fine. Everything was okay. But the point is, this is really tough conditions out there and you need to be prepared.
I saw Garmin Pay the day on my new Garmin. That I should set that up, but it works. I can't. It's like I don't know. I feel like this is like one of those magic things. Like, how does this work? Or pay with your phone. Like, how does this work? Like, I still pull the card out and still do it. But good job. But yeah, no, it's super hot. And I think so. I did intervals today, and it's funny because the last time I did the same set of intervals, I remember remembering it was 45 degrees, and it was one of those really kind of cool days. But it was almost like that perfect day where it felt like a fall cross country run race day where it's like it's kind of cool, but you're going all out, but like you're still cooling down, and you just kind of keep going, go really hard. And then today I was like, okay, wait, this is the opposite. This is now probably 45 degrees warmer today than last time I did the set. So okay, well, how am I going to adjust that? So right away, and the friend I was with was like, okay, we're going to go really easy. We're just going to consider this as like intro back into intervals, and you could end your summary here right now today, or you could just consider this like conservative and easy, and like we're just going to do a few little intervals, a few little efforts, and we had plans to do a couple more. We did some 2-minute intervals, some 1-minute intervals. We're going to do 4 by 2 minute. We did those. Kind of fell off the power on the 4th one, so that was an indication right there. And then we did we were going to do 2 1-minute after that, and we did 2 1-minutes. And we said, you know what? That's good. That is plenty. We are done. Let's roll really easy home.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart because what's really tricky about these hot days is sometimes you don't know how close you are to the edge, that point of no return where, maybe it's heat stroke or you just are not feeling good for several days. And that's where, yeah, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop and I'm going to walk or I'm going to get a Gatorade or I'm just going to ease off here. I think if you're starting to feel any of the signs of, this is not really going well, listen to the warning signs first rather than letting yourself get all the way to that point. And this also speaks to something that you were mentioning a minute ago with like, you might see numbers that seem a lot worse than early in the season when you had a beautiful day, but that doesn't mean that you're having a regression. I have some athletes who are like, my running is literally regressing right now. I'm at week 3 before my big race. I feel like I was making so much progress and now I'm not anymore. It's not actually that. If you had had that hot day back in February, if you went to Florida and go did a run workout there, it would have been so much worse than probably what you could even do
Hmm.
today. So all we can really do is say, okay, get out there when you can, get a little bit of the acclimation going, but know that, you're probably not gonna be able to see the same paces that you would see on a day that doesn't have a jahi of like 160 plus.
So I had a conversation this morning with one of my athletes, and I just said, "Hey, your heart rate's obviously just way off because it's really hot outside. So just, you know what? Let's leave the heart rate monitor at home." And I think I've been telling more and more people, like, just as it got hot, like, just stop. Like a lot of these folks who are familiar with the body, they know how they respond. They're good with RPE. I'm just saying, either just use heart rate as like glance at it every once in a while. I mean, sort of as a joke, like just look at it. It's like, oh my god, look at that thing, look how high it is. But just it's pointing in the wrong direction. Like we don't want people if you're out, your base runs at 9-minute pace, but you're having to run a 12-minute pace because of your heart rate. At this point in the season, it's like, no, no, forget your heart rate, go back to the 9-minute pace. And yeah, you're going to be up 10, 15 heart rate, but that's okay. So heart rate is good to some degree, but I think it's a red herring, I think, in this kind of weather.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think a couple other things that I'm telling athletes are, first of all, when you do any type of intervals in this really, really hot weather, I find that usually there's a runaway train effect with heart rate. So I'm like, do the shortest cool down that you can. Like, honestly, walk home, do your intervals, and then just end it because it's not that useful for you to run 3 more miles at 165 heart rate. And that's something that was starting to happen to me today, where like I started to run home and I was like, I can't actually get out of zone 3, 4 right now. And that's not the stimulus that I was looking for. I was looking for a nice 2 to 3 mile cool down, but it's just not going to happen. And that means I'm going to take a walk. So walk breaks can be really, really useful for that.
Yeah.
And then also trying to be strategic with like, can you go early in the morning? Can you go even inside? Treadmill is not the worst tool in the world to pull out on days that are really dangerously hot.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a little bit of an adjustment, but I find that like think about what the intention of the workout is. If you do feel like you need to get those intervals done, I would do it in a way that's not going to tax you so much more because of the heat. Whereas if it's just an easy run, kind of it is what it is. Go for time on feet. Don't worry about the pace, and then yeah, don't worry about the data too much, especially if you find it's messing with your mindset.
In some ways, yeah, I think we talk about, zone 2 a lot, but we sort of sometimes don't give zone 1 its credit. But I think this is a great time to develop, especially in the bike, like, zone 1, like your warm up can be zone 1 and your cool down should be zone 1. And find that place where you are really just going really, really, really easy on the warm up and the cool down. I think that helps me. Like, it helps me, like, to say, okay, I know my heart rate's I'm going to get hot. How can I get to the 30 minutes away to the hill I want to do my intervals on without arriving there at a heart rate of 150 high, right? So that's where I really find that zone 1 really helps me. And then the way back, it's like, okay, great. We need to cool down and the work is done. So let's just go, like, let's just ride 80, 90 watts, whatever, zone 1 back to the car.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then maybe the last thing I'll say on that too is try to hold out some hope. I mean, it's still only the beginning of July right now. We have a lot of time until we can actually reap the benefits of this like awesome summer training. But just know if you're thinking about half marathons, marathons in the fall, that's a big transition that we see after tri season. You will be so fast. Like that's when those gains that you were starting to feel during our cold spring that were really feeling good, those will actually get realized for, that one-off nice day in the summer where it's not as hot or those amazing crisp fall days. You will be flying faster than you ever were before. So just try to hold out hope for that. It's going to feel so good.
Yeah, you are heat adapting. And actually, I had my core today, but it turns out that you have to actually start your core when you have internet access, it seems like. So I started it too late, couldn't tell, but I'm sure I got some sort of, heat adaptation. I would have loved to know what the temperature was today. But anyway, today, so we just kind of wanted to start with this heat and humidity, but we want to talk a little bit about when this is released. We're going to be about a week and a half out from Ironman Lake Placid. Lots of our listeners either have done it, are doing it, thinking about doing it. It's kind of the beast of the East. And I just want to talk a little bit about a bigger adventure that I had today. So we wanted to talk about the themes of what are the things that you can do pre-big event and things that sort of come up and how you can address them during an Ironman or just some big adventure.
Absolutely. And just a reminder too, maybe you're not doing an Ironman, maybe you have a 7.3, maybe you have a different race, but all these principles are super transferable. So if we're talking about like a specific climb in the Placid context, maybe that maps onto another climb that's in your race, but just try to take this all down as like if you're doing something big, race, adventure, etc. A lot of these things pretty much transcend all of the things that we coach and most of the things our athletes are doing.
We talk principles here, baby.
This is a principles podcast. Wow.
It is.
Are
It's
these
it.
principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching?
I know sometimes I have to come back and say, what is Katie actually saying at the beginning of this thing? Okay.
I love it. All right, well, let's get started on your number one first rule for how to approach that final kind of week plus leading up to a big race like Lake Placid.
Right. So you're a week and a half out. It's a little bit easy to kind of panic, right? But so this is the do's and don'ts. But so a don't is we're not trying to gain any kind of fitness in the last week. And we do see this a lot with some more inexperienced athletes and folks who want to go out and sort of prove that they can do the distance. And you see folks going out to Lake Placid and, or other places and riding 100, 112, 100 miles the weekend before. And we just don't, that mentally maybe something you want to do, but you just physically, you're not, it's just going to train you. And at this point, you're just trying to shed chronic and acute fatigue. So yeah, all easy. Don't try to gain any fitness in the last 2 weeks.
As we always say, the hay is in the barn. Basically, from 3 weeks out, all the hay is there. Just don't touch it. Don't do anything weird. And if you feel extra tired at that time, some people feel like that caged animal feeling, which is honestly the best place to be, say, 3 days out from your race, is like really angry and full of energy. But if you're tired for whatever reason, life is kind of hitting you fast or there's a lot going on, just rest. Like, don't even do those pre-race type workouts. The very best thing that you can do for yourself is shedding that chronic and acute fatigue. And one thing about those two types of fatigue, so acute fatigue, you can usually feel. It's like that soreness in your muscles. It's from that workout you did yesterday or whatever. But chronic fatigue, I think, is a lot harder for people to truly feel because they've been living in a state of chronic fatigue for like the last 16 plus weeks. Maybe you felt it come down a little bit if we tapered you for a race sim or if you went on vacation and you didn't do as much. But it's almost like there's so much fatigue that you can't even feel it. And so your body starts to feel weird when you actually shed that. And you start to feel these niggles and you start to feel a little anxious. But all of that comes with, okay, we are actually just peeling back the layers and getting you to a point where you're going to be able to hit this higher gear that you usually can't.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So don't try to get any fitness. Pre-race checklist. Let's go through a few key things. I think one of the biggest things you can do, it's top of the list, is show up in Lake Placid with a bike that's in perfect working order. I know it's really hectic. It's really super busy before the race, and you got all kinds of stuff and all kinds of gear and just getting stuff together. But really, if you can, bring your bike to the your bike shop, the people early enough, so that you show up on race week, so you're not running around at the expo, trying to find a bike mechanic. Like, oh, I kind of left this one little thing, and now I can't get, whether I can't get this part on, I can't get this hydration system on. This thing's been loose. Oh, this tire has kind of been soft for a while, like all that stuff. Anything that's sort of keeping you up at night, wondering at all about your bike, just take care of it now before you make that drive to Lake Placid.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to kind of sort through and see what you need to do with your bike. The main things to do are just like take it out for a 30 to 60 minute spin probably. Try to go through all the gears. So maybe you live in a flat area and you're never hitting high gears. That could be an issue because Placid is hilly, but you want to make sure like, oh, if I'm in a little gear, am I popping out of it? Is that an issue? Or if I'm in my biggest gear, is that totally fine? Is that smooth? And then also test your brakes. Hopefully you won't have to use them that much in a triathlon context, but those are the kind of the two things that you can do. And then also maybe one more thing is make sure that nothing's rattling around. Like we've had bad situations with, oh, like your bottle cage or whatever it is just not totally screwed in. I had an issue with that I wasn't even expecting at my A race next year. And like the whole front TT setup of my bike was pretty loose. If you can figure that out beforehand, that's probably a pretty good call.
And that sort of brings up the bigger purpose of like, show up and bring all your race gear, right? Test it and ready. And obviously, this is coming out a week and a half before Lake Placid, so hopefully all your testing is done. But really, race day should reflect your race simulations as much as possible. Again, really nothing new on race day unless you're Katie Clayton and you buy a new tri-suit the day before. But that all worked out.
I will take no criticism for that because you could just look at the race results and obviously there was some magic sauce, but no, that's actually like really bad idea. And that's the thing too, like I have heard athletes who are like, oh, I have my lucky shoes and I only wear my lucky shoes in the race. I'm like, you better also wear those lucky shoes in the race sim. Like,
yes.
That is not something to just try a brand new pair of shoes on your Ironman marathon or something. But that being said, like if you need new shoes and you have 2 weeks to go, today is an amazing day to get your new shoes so that you can break them in before you go.
Yeah. Fuel and hydrate well in the days leading up to the race. I think you guys had a great podcast with is it Alex Larson?
Yes, correct.
Had some really good advice on what to do sort of race week. And I don't know, maybe Katie, you can sort of recap some of that.
Yeah, so I think when we think about carb loading, there's a couple different ways to do it. I would say my biggest principle is don't make any huge radical changes to your life and your diet. However, you can get a really big edge from trying to increase like the proportion of your plate that's taken up by carbs. And she has some great calculations for figuring out exactly what that looks like. But I'll note that if you don't want to change your life too much, usually that means like, hey, I'm going to sip sports drink throughout the day. That's a great way to slam a lot of carbs and top off those stores without feeling like, oh, I'm eating 8 plates of pasta like the night before the race. Don't pull a Michael Scott 5K, fettuccine Alfredo
But you know,
situation.
Fredo, exactly.
Yes.
You want to be a winner, you got to feel like a winner.
Exactly. But increasing that carb proportion is really, really important. And then the other thing is you want to cut down on fat and fiber the day before the race because both of those can be pretty inflammatory. Think about like anything mild is really great for the GI system, but if you want to be like slamming carbs, again, it's like 2 to 3 days out. And I would say too, don't worry about being perfect. It's like have dessert and like throw in candy. And I think something that really stood out from Alex's episode, which we will link in the show notes, is she's like, all the things that you think are the way you should fuel, whole grains, brown rice, this and that. She's like, no, do King's Hawaiian rolls and Sour Patch
Yes.
Kids and all this stuff because it's the best and most easily digestible form of carb. So again, that's really fun. Enjoy it. Some fun stuff, but don't make any major changes that you think would sort of just mess with your system overall.
I almost had to hit the rewind button when she said the King's Hawaiian rolls. I'm like, those things are the best. I was
They're
like,
so good.
I was so happy to hear that. Will have to, when I walk by those in the supermarket, it's like, don't look, don't look, don't look.
Unless it's race week, then you
Right,
better
it's
look,
race week.
stock your cart.
I know. I love race week and things like I love like muffins. Like who doesn't love a muffin? It's great. Like at breakfast, like I usually have eggs and a few other things. This and that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a muffin. Like this is so good. Or banana bread or cake or whatever it is. Like race week is awesome. It's a celebration.
It really is. Yeah. And I will say, actually, it is pretty normal in my experience to start feel like a little weird from all those carbs. Like you might feel a little bit bloated. You might just be like, oh, I feel different from usual, but that's okay. Like that is also a sign that you're topping off your stores and that you're probably loaded up well as you should be on sodium and electrolytes. And that's actually kind of the next point of this is make sure you're hydrating super well, especially for these hot races. So I'm usually taking in like a little extra element just in my daily hydration in those days before the race, even if I'm working out less, and that's the point too. You might not feel the same appetite cues because you aren't training as much, but you still need to fuel just as much because again, you are probably kind of chronically depleted most of the training cycle just because it's so hard to break even when you're training for an Ironman. Use that week as a time to kind of come back up to baseline and hopefully have a little bit of surplus because the Ironman is going to ask a lot of your body or the 70.3 or the marathon, whatever it is, anything longer than like an hour and a half to 2 hour races where I'm telling athletes like we really want to carb load.
Yep. And I think so some of that, something that's not actually in our outline, but just came up with here is sleep, right? You can bank some sleep, race week. And even if it just means like getting to bed 30 minutes before you usually do, right? Like that's going to make a big difference. And, I don't know about you, Katie, but I don't really sleep, quote, sleep before the night before a race. I'm pretty amped up. So I like to try to bank it a little bit, try to just go to bed earlier. And then when I go to bed on the race night or the night for the race, I just think about, okay, I just need to rest. I just need to lay here and just relax. And I think so for me, like that helps take the pressure off. And then probably maybe I do sleep a little bit, but I don't know. How do you sleep before a big day?
Yeah, I think I remember the night before Ironman St. George, I literally slept for 40 minutes. And it reminded me of that quote from Elf where he's like, I got a full 40 minutes. Like, I'm still set. And I was like, yeah, I got a full 40 minutes of sleep. But yeah, it's really hard. I mean, all the anxiety is there. And I feel like most of the time people are really worried about, like, am I even going to wake up in time? To be fair, I have never, ever slept past my alarm ever in my entire life. My anxiety levels are too high to have that happen ever. But I will say like that is super normal. And something that I usually do earlier in the week is I try to ratchet back my bedtime a little bit. So if I know that I have to wake up at like some ungodly hour, 3:30, 4 in the morning, depending on what the race is, I will start trying to go to bed a little bit earlier. So you go from like 10 o'clock to 9:30 to 9. And maybe I'm even getting in bed at like 8 o'clock, 8:30. Even if you can't fall asleep right away, you're trying to train your body to be used to that because it'll be really hard to fall asleep early or even have a shot at it in the days before the race if you haven't kind of practiced ratcheting your bedtime back a little bit. So do the math on when you actually need to wake up. And then I recommend trying to just bring things back a little.
And sort of tying the sleep and the waking up and the hydration feeling together. There's sometimes this notion of like you have to get up and you're 2 hours before you have to be on the start line and do your breakfast and blah 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 blah. And I know athletes who get up really super early to have their quote breakfast, and then because starts at 6 o'clock, but I'm gonna have my breakfast at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I don't know. I've always been an advocate of like I get up like at enough to get to the race site, but I've got the bag of snacks with me. I've got kind of breakfast with me, and I'm sort of eating as I go and stuff. And so, I mean, for me personally, I don't wake up early so I can have breakfast because this is a long, long, long day. And maybe if it was a super sprinter or something, and I wanted all that stuff digested before. But the way you should really, and we'll talk about this later, is pace an Ironman. It's just pretty easy for the first number of hours. So I don't see any need to get up quote early to eat breakfast. But how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think the reason that a lot of people want to get up so early because they want to like have time to like have coffee and go to the bathroom and whatever. Realistically, in an Ironman, you are going to go to the bathroom sometime during the race. Like it is going to be a many, many hour event. It's going to be a super long time from when you're waking up. So I wouldn't stress about that as much as I might worry about it for like a run race. I think running is a lot tougher on the GI system. In the Ironman context, like if you're going to have GI distress, you're going to have GI distress. And it's probably not because your morning routine and coffee timing wasn't perfectly dialed. Like there are many, many other things that are going to factor into that. So there, again, like getting a little bit of extra sleep. But that being said, if you feel like the best way to have the right mindset going into a race is trying to replicate your usual routine at home, then I think it's fine. And if you're going to be awake anyway because you're nervous and you want to just get up and have your coffee and have your breakfast, like that's okay with me too. So everyone has to know themselves. But I would just say don't worry as much about like, okay, I have to time my coffee perfectly and my food perfectly like I would for a run race. I'm very methodical about that. With an Ironman, it's like there's going to be a long day and we have a warm-up swim to start with. So let's just focus on what we need to do to feel ready for that.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those ones. There's the many roads to Rome on this one. So whatever works best for you, but don't feel like you've got to get up. And I know it's something that people signal like I'm gonna get up so early and I'm gonna get my stuff. I'm gonna eat my stuff at 3 hours in advance, and so it'll digest. Like, oh, I don't. Yeah, it's an Ironman, kids. It's a long day.
I have a question actually that's just crossed my mind. What's the earliest you've ever had to wake up for a race or an event? I was trying to think about
Oh,
that for me.
yeah, boy. I feel like that 3:45 is sort of a alarm that I think all endurance athletes have 3:45 as one of their. I don't know. What do you? I think it's probably the earliest. I can't imagine a two ever. I don't know. What's your earliest?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever entered the twos. Probably a 3:30. I think Sea to Summit starts at 5, so I
Yeah.
probably did a 3 or a 3:30 for that. But that's some next level. Like you don't want to have
That's
to
a
do that too much
that's
if
a
you can avoid it.
right. That's when you sit on the boat for the first hour and you're like just
Yeah.
sort of sleeping. And you go, "What's?
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know what's happening. I don't even know where we're going.
Yeah.
This is gonna start poorly and maybe end poorly. I don't know."
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then related to rest, I think this is a nice segue. You want to stay off your feet as much as possible 1 to 2 days before the race. I think people underestimate how many steps you rack up, like going to the expo and even just doing all the things you have to do the day before an Ironman. You usually have to go to a briefing, you have to drop off your bike, you have to drop off your special needs bag, parking can be far away. Before you know it, without any pre-race workouts, you might rack up 10,000 steps super, super easily.
Yeah.
And so that means eliminate any bonus steps. You don't want to take a walk. That's not the day to just like, oh, let's take an after dinner walk, whatever that is. Basically, we always say if you're standing, but you could be sitting, sit down. If you're sitting, but you could be lying down, lie down. And if you're lying down, but you could be sleeping, you should be sleeping. That is the name of the game for 1 to 2 days before the race. And I always love, like, sometimes you're standing in line. I remember this last year at Sea to Summit. There was a long line waiting for check-in, and everyone was standing for like 45 minutes. And I just sat down in the middle of the line, in the middle of the parking lot, looking around, being like, these people are schmucks. Like, come on.
Yes, exactly. It's
Makes
amateurs.
me sound like kind
Amateurs
of a
all
jerk,
you.
but like just sit down. You don't have to prove anything by standing in this line. So
It's
anyway,
true.
if you sit down or lay down in the middle of the pavement or on the grass, be like, I know something secret right now about this kind of race.
Right. People looking over go, what do they know that I don't know? Right. Like if they're way off of left field or they're really onto something. So, but anyway, you brought up something about the race briefing. So I had a call with some of my Ironman athletes, yeah, like Placid athletes last night. And one of them said, it's their first Ironman. I said, should I go to the race briefing? And I said, I got two minds on this one. I said, because honestly, they're not going to tell you anything in the race briefing that's going to materially change your day. If there was, for example, like a forest fire or there was a hurricane coming or flooding, and there was sort of like, what's going to happen today? Like it's going to fundamentally, materially change the race, then yeah, probably the race briefing is good to go to. And I said, if you guys have read through the rule book, we talked about drafting and the other things. They're not going to really tell you probably anything that's going to change your plan. But on the other hand, it's kind of nice to go there. You're with your tribe. You get to sort of see, sometimes it's done by the announcer of the race, and you just sort of get in that, like, oh gosh, we're here. Like it feels real when you get to the race briefing, and there's some level of excitement to it. So, but I don't know. I'm about two minds because I think you should go, but then again, you could skip it too.
Yeah, I totally share those mindsets. And I think if logistically it's hard for you, if you're going to have to like do something crazy with traffic and driving and whatever to make it to a race briefing, just take that off your plate as something to stress about. If, however, you have arrived on site 4 days in advance and you're just literally trying to kill time soaking in everything that Ironman is, sure, you can go and they might crack some jokes and you might feel extra excited. It reminds me actually, and this is good advice. I have a lot of athletes who are doing like 70.3 worlds later this year, athletes that are going to Kona, for example. The advice that I got the first time was, all the hype and all the events around it. There's the parade, there's the bonfire, there's the banquet, like all this stuff. Is the food good? No. Is the entertainment good? Like, no, it's pretty cringy and weird. But if you want to fully experience everything about this trip or whatever this is, like, then go do it. And I think the race briefing is similar. Like, it's all part of the Ironman hype, and that's really, really special for some people. But if that's not your thing and you just want to be inside under a fan, I think that's completely fine too.
Yep. Again, many roads to Rome on this one. So we're going to give you all the options and you decide. Yeah. So, okay. So we've arrived at the swim. Katie, what should we do to swim? Should we go hard? Should we just go all out? Like, let's just get a jump on this day, right? You usually swim like a 120, but I'm going to swim like a 110 today just to prove it.
Yeah, so that's exactly what not to do. We said this before, but the swim is the warm up to the warm up. It should be super chill. I usually tell people don't go any harder than a 5 or 6 out of 10 RPE, probably not over a 5. And the whole time you should be asking yourself, like, is this a little bit too easy? If that's your question, then you're probably at the right intensity. For a course like Lake Placid too, you want to think about just little exertion as possible, which means get right on the cable, get in that jet stream that's coming from everyone else who is swimming on the cable. And if you're behind someone who's a little slow, it's okay. You don't need to fight to get around them. There will be jostling, there will be jockeying, moving around later. So just think about really good, smooth strokes. I always tell people slow is smooth is fast. That's a really nice mantra for the swim. And if you're panicking at all, first of all, that means you're going too hard. And secondly, really think about like a nice long exhale, getting your breathing under control. And if you need to, switch to a breaststroke, switch to a backstroke, switch to something that's going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable, because panicking from minute 1 is a great way to basically burn all of your matches in this way.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up a good point about drafting somebody. And, it's funny because I'll be swimming along and a decent effort, right? It's on some of these races. Then I get behind somebody and then it's just so much easier. And then you start to think, oh, it's so easy that maybe this person's going exceedingly slow. And I'm just like, no, I'm blowing my race because they're going so slow. So if you feel that way, first of all, get behind somebody. If you can get behind somebody, stay on them. It's okay if you touch their toes a little bit. Don't touch their toes too much, but you can touch just a little bit. Stay there as much as possible. And then if you really truly do think that they're going too slow, then just go off to the side a little bit and try swimming on your own and just see how much effort there is and look over and see them and say, what you're probably going to find out is that they're actually swimming probably at the pace that you want to swim. So just go back in behind them and say, okay, great. I'm going to follow these feet for as long as possible. It's kind of a fun game to play. Actually, it's like, how long can I stay with this person, on their feet? Because eventually you just lose them on a turn or just something happens and you lose them. But I like to sort of sometimes get onto somebody's feet and be like, let's see how long I can stay here and just make it so like, just do a big long catch up stroke and just stay right behind them and let them pull me. It's amazing how much energy you save.
And I will say too, whenever you're drafting off someone and then you get off their feet, you might realize like, oh, they actually are going the right pace for me. Like this would be a lot harder if I wasn't drafting. And that's why I think sometimes people think it's too easy. One note on that though, this applies a little bit less to Lake Placid because there's not as big of a need for really good sighting, but don't assume in other races that someone who's swimming in front of you knows what they're doing with sighting. So you still want to be sighting. And if they are zigzagging all over the course, those are not good feet to be on. So that would be the reason to kind of get off those feet and not play the game of how long can I stay here, because you may swim like an extra 500 yards when you don't want to.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we emphasize a lot at the endurance dive, and I think we're sort of proud of, is that a lot of our swimmers or a lot of our triathletes they're good open water swimmers. Like they know how to navigate. Again, we don't have to swim fast, just have to swim well. You have to swim from this buoy to that buoy in a straight line. And I think we do a really good job emphasizing that starting in the pool and then practicing that a lot in open water. So I think that, folks who are being coached by us, you probably assume that you're probably pretty good swimmer and you're probably swimming pretty accurately. So that's where the grain of salt is. Like if you follow somebody, chances are they may not be that good at navigating.
And assume too that, the best way to have a fast swim without going fast is just to swim the actual distance. Like if you swim a lot
Right.
extra, that's a really, really slow swim. And we're saying swim slow, but swim very, very accurately. That's
Yeah.
probably your fastest ticket to a good swim.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So now we're out of the swim. We talked about this before at Lake Placid. You're going to come out of the swim. There's thousands of people cheering you on going down to T1. So the key there is don't run or sprint down to T1. You get your wetsuit off and, efficiently make your way down the hill and look for your family or friends because they'll be there cheering you on. But yeah, don't rush down to T1 and burn a match there.
Yeah, I think it's like best described as a light shuffle. You're not necessarily strolling, but you're just like plopping along. It's not even as fast as you might be running your marathon later on. Your bare feet, you don't want to turn an ankle, anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's T1, getting into the bike. Be efficient in transition, but in an Ironman, you do want to take time to do what you need. So if it means like you want to do a quick stop at the porta potty, great, do it. If you want to put on like chamois cream, absolutely do it. You don't want to be chafing for the next 12 hours or anything. So think about whatever's going to make you comfortable, put those socks on, etc. And usually the time that it takes to do all of that, I find you can usually get down a little bit of snack or hydration, which is nice. You're already in a pretty big deficit from having swum 4,200 plus yards and then run into transition. So I think if you can get a snack in that T1, that's really smart.
Yeah, I've been telling my athletes, like, if you can get, somewhere between 500 and 750 calories in on T1, like, go for it. Really get something substantial in there, because if you think about, if you swim 4,000 yards at Masters or just do it on your own out in a lake, you come out of there like, I'm starving to death. So that's how you're going to feel. You may not feel it because you're going to be ignoring it, because there's going to be so many other stimuluses going on in that day that you may not feel that hunger, but you still have that metabolic cost. So yeah, eat something fairly substantial in T1, something gentle. Yeah, like muffins or jelly and croissant, like something just kind of easy to get down, but like something that you probably wouldn't have on the bike, but something that's a little bit substantial.
Because I find that usually at that point, your stomach's usually in a decent place. Things might go totally crazy later on the run or earlier on the bike, but
Yeah.
Just think about how you usually feel after that swim. And I've had the feeling before, I don't know if it's starting an Ironman, but like coming off that swim and being like, oh, I'm kind of hungry, and you don't want to be hungry. Like that means we're already in the hole a little bit. And then I've just had to really overcorrect with like start that fueling immediately on the bike. But sometimes it's just easier logistically to take fuel in. Maybe you lose a minute in transition. A minute does not matter in the context of an Ironman for the most part. So think about the smartest thing that's going to save you lots of minutes on the back end.
Yep, exactly. All right. So you're on the bike. As we always say, keep light pressure on your pedals. If you have a power meter, you're probably looking at somewhere between 0.65 to 0.72 intensity factor, a percentage of your FTP. So again, really light. And always just kind of, always just ask yourself, right? Even whether you have a power meter or don't have a power meter, can I maintain this effort for 6 to 7 hours? So even if you have a power meter and you're hitting these, you quote your numbers, your goals, but you think, I don't know if I can maintain this for 6 to 7 hours, like just dial it back. We've seen a lot of fast bike splits or decent bike splits in Ironman just by people like being able to be consistent. They're staying in aero as much as possible. And maybe they're rolling at 65% of their FTP, but they maintained a lot of aero and just were able to stay in aero for a while. So just remained consistent. So, don't worry so much about the numbers as opposed to like what feels sustainable. And then, what allows me to get off this bike and then to be able to move my body 26 miles.
Absolutely. And then I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, but thinking about how to ride hills, you really, really want to ease back on those uphills and then be pushing kind of over as you crest the hill on the flats and then on the downhills. You want as even as possible of a sort of effort throughout. And obviously, if you're descending in Keen, you're not going to be pushing Ironman watts. You're not going to be pushing any watts at all. But in general, just think about, hey, it's a hill. This is a time for me to ease back really, really light pressure instead of blasting it, which a lot of people will do.
And, it's that 30-minute climb out of Placid, right? It doesn't look that steep, but it kind of is a little bit steep coming out of Lake Placid. So there's like, 30 or 40 minutes out of Lake Placid where it's kind of slow, right? And I was telling a lot of my athletes, like, you're going to see a lot of people go by you on $15,000 tri bikes, just trucking, just blowing it out of the water. And 9 of those 10 folks are going to blow up later on. And 1 of 10 are going to make it stick because they're really good athletes. And they really are going to put in a bike split of 23 to 24 miles an hour. Like there are people who are going to do that. And pros are going to do faster. But by and large, just let those folks go. It's really hard to ignore everybody sort of whipping by you on that first 30 to 40 minutes, but just be super patient and just, play your game.
And that's where I think too, just knowing that I like to look at average speed anytime I'm on a ride, just knowing kind of where things stand. But I find that, in the first 30 minutes, if you think about that hour, that first hour of the bike usually gets me to the bottom of the key descent. Those first 30 minutes, you might be averaging like 10 miles an hour or something.
Yeah.
And then you get to the bottom of the key and it's 20. So just don't think like, oh my gosh, I'm having a bad day because you see some type of average miles per hour. Yeah, if you average 10 miles an hour in an Ironman, you wouldn't even make the bike cutoff, but it's just not going to be like that forever. So just being prepared, and this applies to any other course, of know where the climbs are, because then you won't necessarily get discouraged. Know where the headwinds are, for example. If you know that it's a big out and back flat course and it's complete headwind on the way out and complete tailwind on the way back, assume you're going to make up a lot of time. On the other hand, if you're cruising at 22 miles an hour with a big honking tailwind and then you turn around at 16 miles per hour, you want to be mentally prepared for that type of thing too. So that just means a little bit more course recon before you go.
Yep, exactly right. So one of the cool features that you have either in your Garmin or your Wahoo is you can set up an alert to tell you to do something every 15 minutes. So I'd recommend that. Is just because Ironman's a rolling buffet. So every 15 minutes you want to be doing something. Generally, you want to be drinking, and maybe you want to be drinking and eating every 15 minutes. Definitely every 30 minutes, right? But to have something just goes beep, and it's like, oh, okay, I have to do something. So your whole day really just becomes these 15-minute increments, right? It's not 112 miles. It's just the next 15 minutes really is what it is. And at 15 minutes, a thing goes off. You're like a Pavlov dog. You do so. You sit up. Oh, I got to do something. You do something, and then you go back to the next 15 minutes. So it's kind of a nice way to break up the day and just ensure that you're going to get a constant feed of hydration and sugar to your brain.
And I think on this point about fueling, think about having extra food in your bike special needs bag. That's something that you can look forward to, and assume that your taste will probably change a little bit over the course of the ride. Hopefully, we've done some troubleshooting on that in your race sims where you realize, like, oh, at hour 4, I actually hate Nature's Bakery fig bars, but they're great for the first 3. Know that you might want to swap out to something new. And sometimes that can be like potato chips or Coke or something like that, that maybe you don't have in training as much. I find that those are 2 really, really common things that people gravitate towards. So think about what are my kind of emergency fuel sources. And it's also great to have more than you think you need. So I always tell people, budget for a full additional hour of fuel on your like most conservative bike time estimate, because if you get a mechanical, the clock keeps rolling. If it's really bad weather, if you just have a tough day and it takes longer than you think, you want to have the fuel to get you all the way through the entire length of time.
Yeah, I think one of the cruel things that happens, the race gods descend upon us, and they change our taste buds a little bit on race days, right? Everything that worked for you during your race sims, sometimes they don't always work on race day. And I think it's always one of the biggest surprises. And I know this isn't quite relevant, and this is not our outline, Katie, but we were talking last night with some of my Ironman athletes. And when you and I are recording this, we're now sort of 2 or 3 weeks out, and they're going to have some, like, maybe a little bit longer ride this weekend. And they're saying, should I use the same products that I've always been using in all the race sims and everything I've been using? Or is there a chance that maybe I get, I get tired of my taste, right? Like, so should I maybe like not use as much this weekend or something, or maybe switch up my fuel sources? And then we sort of talked about this, and I independently have been thinking about the same thing. Like, if you're always using super scratch and dip, always been using it over and over and over again, if the 2 or 3 weeks before your race, I'd still use some of it, but I'd also play with something else a little bit, just so A, you have a plan B on race days, you have that. And B is that you're not just like going in full throttle on one flavor for like 12 weeks straight, right? If you can get a little bit of break from it, I think that kind of helps. And I've been thinking about it independently, and some of my athletes are like, hey, I've been thinking about this too. And so anyway, I never really thought about that until recently, but I don't know if you have a take on that.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I've always been so like, no, this is my system. This is exactly how I do it. And I don't want to change anything leading up to the race day. But, in all likelihood, taking in a different form of high carb mix, it's not going to like give you such bad GI distress that your race is ruined in 2 weeks. Like, worst case, you take a couple sips and you're like, you know what? Orange tailwind is not actually for me. And I'm going back to scratch, and that's
Right.
fine. So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, why not? And I think, too, maybe the most valuable thing you can do is research what's on the course and try it beforehand. Because I find that if, at the end of the day, something goes crazy and you need to rely on aid stations, you don't want the first time that you're ever trying Morton gels or Mortal to be, in the race. I've had that happen as an athlete before. I tried a Morton gel, I think at mile 14 of Ironman Lake Placid in 2023, and spat it on the ground because I was like, this is gross and weird and I don't want this anymore. So it probably would have been a good thing if I'd at least gotten a little bit more accustomed to like the oystery texture before I tried it in the context of mile 13 of a race.
Yep. One thing, I'm a huge Element fan, and I use it all the time, but I also started recently using some of the precision hydration stuff, which has basically the same amount of sodium you can get per bottle. And so I've been kind of going back and forth now. So we use that as an example of, like, say, if you are using only Element in your race simulations, hey, maybe pick up a few of the pH, and just have a second source of sodium that you could use. And that has a very different flavor than Element. I find that I sort of get tired a little bit over a long day of Element. And so I wish in this last thing I'd just done that I had some pH with me, because I needed the sodium, but I was just kind of getting sick of like the artificial flavor. I mean, part of the appeal of Element sometimes, like, it's got a flavor and it's like, oh, I want that flavor. But when you're sick of that flavor, you are sick of that flavor.
Yeah, totally agree with that. With an eye to time, let's speed through kind of our other bike tips. One thing just specific to Ironman Lake Placid is assume that that stretch from Wilmington back into town, it's about 10 miles, is going to be tough. It's normal that it will feel tough the first time. You have to do it 2 times, but just continue your carbs, continue your hydration, and try to not let it get in your head too much that it's tough. I think it can help if you have the expectation it will be really hard. But the reason that it's hard is that it's kind of just a grindy uphill the entire time, which ends with some really steep climbs, and it'll almost always have a headwind. So don't just tell yourself the day is over. It can only get worse. The day is going to have a lot of ebbs and flows, and you will feel great when you get back into town, get some more fuel, etc. That's just a really hard part of the course for a lot of people.
I heard a lot on the post race sims this last weekend that just, yeah, I mean, get to mile 90, and I don't think anybody feels great. Regardless of what your bike fitness is and how much you spend time on your bike or tri bike, road bike, whatever it is, when you get to mile 90 on any ride, he's like, I kind of want to get off this bike. And so I think you're definitely going to feel that. So everybody feels that. Not everybody's saying that. Somebody look around and go, is anybody else feeling this terrible? And some people are saying it and other people are just sort of hiding it well. But just so you know, like, I think actually when you start back from that climb up to J, because then you have that difference. Of course, it's a little bit different now than when we first talked about this. But yes, back from Wilmington, definitely going to be hard. Probably coming back from J is, I think, around mile 90, that first big climb out of there. Yeah, if you're feeling it, like, yeah, you should be, because it's kind of normal, right? But you'll get through it.
I feel like this is like a raise your hand if you have cried on the climb coming back in from Wilmington moment. And I'm like,
Yeah.
raising my hand.
Yes, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
normal. It's totally normal. Just be prepared that it's going to happen.
And it's right, and it's rained on you or something. Is there been windy or something? There's always like that wave face tends to hold its own weather system there. So if you faces some wind, some rain there, like, it's okay. That's natural. Like, it's just, that's the wave face effect.
Totally. All right. So we've made it to C2. You want to take your time there. Definitely try to reset, refuel, rehydrate. That's a great time to get in some more fuel and to have something that's different from what you've been having for the entire bike. Assume that on the run, like, you're not really going to be wolfing down like a bagel or anything like that. So if you have any opportunity to get in some solid fuel while you're in T2, you should do that. And I will say something that I've experienced almost every time in an Ironman that I enter T2 is my legs feel bad getting off the bike for just a couple minutes, but don't assume that they're going to feel bad forever. Usually it's just changing the position that you're in. Like, you'll be sort of jogging in, you're all wobbly, like deer legs, etc. I usually find that once you actually get your shoes on and get out the door and start running, you're going to be okay. So don't freak out if you just feel a little bit weird when you first get off the bike.
Right. It's a newborn calf feeling of the legs. And like, oh, why? Yeah, I'm not familiar with this, but so yeah, coming out of T2, the crowds, they're going to hype you up. You're going to hopefully see family, friends, just people going crazy. There's literally thousands of people cheering you on. Like, you are the rock star today and you have earned it. But also, don't take the bait. And so the point is, come out of T2. Also, you're going downhill. So yeah, it's a good chance to check in on your heart rate, because probably a little bit jacked up, and your pace, and just say, okay, I want to build into a race pace, right? And after we talked about, it's like, a 10 to 12 minute mile race pace can be pretty fast later on. But if you normally don't run 8:30 pace off the race sims and you see yourself running 8:30 pace on mile 1 at Ironman Lake Placid, like, yeah, consider taking it down a notch.
Yeah, and think about too, when you finish up those race sims, like, where is your pace at the very end of that 13-mile run off the bike? Miles 10, 11, 12, 13. That's probably a lot closer to what your Ironman race pace is actually like, not the fresh, miles that you're out there and it was a cool day and you actually felt great. I hope that for all our athletes, but it's unlikely. And best case scenario is, okay, you start out at a little bit more conservative pace and you actually feel good and can sustain it the whole time. If you can sustain the pace that you were sustaining at the end of these shorter race sim runs, that's amazing for an Ironman run. So just be prepared for, this is a much longer run than we've done off the bike the entire Ironman build. I don't have my athletes ever run longer than 13 off the bike, which would be max. And sometimes it's more like 10 off the bike. So just know this is going to be a lot longer than that.
No, I really like that metric a lot about, we all come off the bike and the first couple miles may feel great. But I think, right, like what we running at mile 8, at mile 9, mile 10 on the race sims, that's more like yeah, that's a great metric. Okay, so stop at every aid station, right? There's going to be a mile. There's like, the cool thing about Ironman is that there's something happening every mile. And you just need to go from mile to mile to mile. So stop at every aid station and, pour ice down your kit or put it in your hat, put it in your hands, put it in your mouth, pour water over your head. But, get Coke, get whatever you need there, right? Get a gel, but just just plan on stopping at every aid station. So, best case scenario, you run a mile, you walk through aid stations, you get what you need, and thank a volunteer, and then you move on to the next mile.
And that helps from a mindset perspective too, because it's not a 26-mile run, it's 26 1-mile runs and then a little thing at the end of 0.2 miles. But then just saying, I'm going to get to the next aid station, I think that helps people kind of get through a little bit faster. And I always tell people this is even a strategy for the most elite runners. So if you look at Chelsea Sodaro when she won Ironman in Kona, when she won the World Championships in 2022, I believe, she probably averaged under 7-minute pace for her marathon because that's usually what it takes to win. And she walked through the aid stations too. So it doesn't mean that, you're going slow or it's bad to walk or anything. Sometimes that's just the way to get in the carbs and calories that you need to keep going. And that will give you a nice boost kind of going forward. That makes up any time that you lost from walking.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I have never mastered being able to drink out of a cup while running. And even if I squeeze it together, I have to stop and I have to chug it down. I can't run and squeeze it and in the corner of my mouth.
Yeah, you should probably spend some time in some fraternity basements and then you can learn how to chug effectively. But
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Exactly right. You're gonna write that in my plan.
yeah. All right. A couple other things. Even if the thought of taking another gel is making you gag, you have to figure out calories in some other form. So honestly, in my experience, Coke is great for something like that. It doesn't have sodium though, so think about having salt with you. Maybe it's salt tabs, maybe it's a base salt works, or there's like salt stick chews. But for me, I usually have a strategy for my fueling on the run that goes to shit after 13 miles or so, and that's where I just switch to Coke. But you can actually get a lot of carbs in if you're taking Coke at every single aid station as you walk through.
Yep. And so last couple of things here, we had mentioned here, thank every volunteer. Ironman racing does not happen without volunteers, period. End of story. Like, it takes thousands of people. I don't know how many thousands of people it takes to volunteer at any one of these Ironmans, or even a half Ironman, right? It takes probably hundreds of people, hundreds of volunteers at a half, and literally thousands at an Ironman. So, some high school kid who's out there who's on the swim team, whatever, racing money for them, like, just make sure you say thank you. And for me, I know it just helps me, it sort of gets me out of my head too, to also just interact a little bit with the volunteers, because, they're very supportive, and it's just, yeah, I love the energy, and I'm always so impressed at the energy that they bring to, they're giving to you. Like, there's so much giving of energy out there from the volunteers to the racers. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I love that. And I will say this is a quick sidebar, but I don't know if we've mentioned this in a long time. If you haven't done an Ironman and you think you might want to do an Ironman, maybe it's Lake Placid, maybe it's another one, the most valuable thing you can do is volunteer at an Ironman. So you made me do that. I think the year before I did my first Ironman in 2018, we volunteered at Ironman Lake Placid, and it really gives you a window into what it's like out there. If you're seeing people at mile 17, you see that it's a lot of walking and a lot of bodily fluids and a lot of crying and all of this stuff. And you have to make sure that's actually what you're carved out for. But at the same time, you can really, really help racers feel better or just get through that rough patch, even if it's just giving them ice. So think about doing that if you ever get the opportunity, whether you want to do an Ironman or not. I think it's an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if and hopefully you volunteer, and then if you maybe do volunteer, and then just go watch the race, and especially watch the run for the second loop, and just begin to sort of see what happens after, what to most people, to the human body, after having been out there all day long. It's very instructive about what it is. And, we all watched, Ironman Kona on NBC, right? And it's like so fast. It's so sexy. And like, oh, look at these people going. I can't wait to be like that flying, and then go watch an Ironman or volunteer to Ironman. And you think, oh, okay. So yes, this 5% and 1% of people were doing what I saw on the Kona broadcast. I mean, see, that was really cool, but the other 99%, they're not doing that. It's so different.
Yeah. And they're still so awesome in their own way. Like, it's a different thing though. And so you just have to understand, like, you probably will not beat Chelsea Sodaro. It's awesome if you are. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But probably you will be like one of the regular people that's doing this amazing, not so regular thing. And just know that it looks a little bit different. It's a lot of walking, but it's still super, super awesome. So be prepared for that for sure. And our last point on the run in general, I think this is something you would pick up on if you were seeing kind of this run walk shuffle that happens, is keep moving forward. Whatever you do, walking is actually pretty fast. Shuffling is pretty fast. Running is fast. The thing that's slow is standing at an aid station or being stuck in a port potty for 15 minutes. That's where you really start to lose a lot of time. But know that, like, if you walk a mile at 15-minute miles and you come back to running, you're back into those 11-minute miles, it's not even that different overall. And you can still have like a pretty solid Ironman time with a decent amount of walking. So keep moving forward and know that every mile that you get through is one less mile to go.
Right. Yeah. It's only 26 miles at T2. And when you do the first mile, and you're like, oh, I only have 25 miles to go. So there's only a marathon at the very beginning. But yeah, I think it's really important. Just like mentally, just getting to that spot of like just not judging yourself. Cause I know I struggle with this and like I have a plan, it's my plan. And this is the things that I've been dreaming about. I'm going to do this paces. And then, oftentimes plan A does sometimes happen, right? It happens sometimes. And that's great. And you really remember those races, those plan A races. You're like, oh my gosh, that everything just came together. It was incredible. But a lot of times, again, back to the bell curve, it's plan B, which is like, we're pretty much like this is kind of like what most people are doing. And so I have to remind myself that plan B is really good. And plan C, just finishing, is amazing as well, too. So as long as you're moving forward, and I know that most of the people who listen to our podcast have been training, have been working hard, and you are going to finish. Like it's going to happen. Just keep moving forward in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, well, I think that was good. We will maybe talk about Lake Placid one more time before it goes live, but afterwards we'll have our post-race insights. I want to transition us in our last kind of little bit here to talk about you did a huge, amazing thing recently. So if you have not heard of this before, some really, really cool thing to do in New England is the 200 on 100, which Jim did recently. And I want to hear all about the lessons that you learned from this because I think they applied to unstructured adventures to structured racing. Honestly, it all comes back to things like pacing and nutrition and mindset and fueling and gear. But I want to hear what you took away from 200 on 100.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, first, I wanted to sort of document like what I learned personally. I wanted to have notes, so I sort of put these in here. So we're not going to go through all my notes, but I wanted, if you're interested in 2 on 100, there's more details in here. And again, you can always email me. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. But yeah, we wanted to sort of link this in with Ironman, like you're racing something big or it's an ultra run or something, but just a big day or a self-curated adventure. So anyway, 2 on 100, essentially there's Route 100. It starts in the Canadian border and it goes to the Massachusetts border. There's a few little detours here and there, but basically it's Route 100. And so most people do it on usually on the summer solstice, June 21st. And you go north to south. And I'll go more about that later on. And so anyway, this year I thought there'd be a bunch of people out there because usually it's organized pretty well. There's a big group of people who do it. Turns out this year, not that many people did it, but it was a beautiful day. I think there was probably, we saw one fella who started before us, and then there was 3 other people behind us. But basically, I think there was like 6 of us out there that only. I thought there'd be like 50 people out there or 100 people out there. So anyway, I put the link here to 200 on 100 website. The last time they updated this website was 2024. I think they've moved most stuff now to Facebook. But anyway, lots of information on there. You'll get the gist of what this adventure is all about from their website. It's really good information. But anyway, I want to come back to some of the stuff that I learned that I think is that would be relevant to some of your big adventures coming up, Ironman, other stuff, right? So nutrition and fueling, Coke. We've mentioned it before. Coke is the ultimate endurance fuel. And I forgot about this. I had my Martins, I had all my gels, I had all my elements, I had everything. I was like, I am going to do this thing perfectly all day long, right? And I estimated it was going to take about 12 hours of biking, 12 and a half hours of biking, and probably about 14 hours total because you just have to stop and get some stuff and take a pee and this and that, right? And you just sort of, you 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and suddenly it's blown out to 2 hours. So my plan was 12 hours of fuel, had plenty of fuel. We actually had a support person helping us, and we could refuel at 93 miles, all of our stuff. But anyway, when the crap hit the fan, where did I go to? I went to Coke. I went right to Coke at about a mile 100, and it was delightful. And the more I think about Coke, is that there's probably no other drink in human history where billions of dollars have been spent to make it the most palatable thing in the world, right? Like, what other thing in the world have spent that much money making it? So why do we all love Coke? Well, I don't know. They spent billions of dollars designing these things for us to love it. So as much as, Tailwind and more and all these other companies have done research, like they're small in comparison to what Coke has done. So anyway, big believer in that. Plus, there's 240 calories, 65 grams of carbs in a 20-ounce bottle. So great. And, I was able to like just knock back a whole Coke. And so getting that 65 grams of carbs like right away with a little bit of caffeine. There's a little bit less caffeine than what I thought, but there's some caffeine in there as well too. But this is a perfect mix. And I found that just a bottle of Coke really kind of kept me going for about 45 minutes. And I felt that was much different than I don't know. I couldn't really chug like a whole thing of like Martin or something or Tailwind, but man, I can chug a Coke. But anyway, Katie, I know you're a big fan of Coke as well too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's weird that I don't really ever train with it and I don't usually have it in life, but there's something about how your taste buds change and you just need that straight sugar. And I find that it also is kind of gentle on the GI system for whatever
Yes.
reason. All of the artificial things in there are just so, so good for you. High fructose corn syrup goes down so easy.
It does go sound so easy. So anyway, so pro tip is that I've been telling some of my Ironman athletes, like, hey, why don't you consider putting a Coke either in your bike special needs or your run special needs, or even in T1, T2, right? Because, first of all, they're cheap. And if you don't use it, that's fine, right? But if you need it, you can really chuck it down. You get a big bunch of Coke, a bunch of carbs really quickly. So close second behind Coke, I found potato chips. I always discover potato chips on these big adventures. I don't know what goes to my brain. I don't know why I don't put them in my nutrition plan, but somewhere, usually, again, sort of beyond half of the day, elements great, pH is great, but potato chips, they're amazing. And what you can do is you can scrunch them up and you can put them, actually buy some, scrunch them up, put them in a little Ziploc bag, and then just pour them in your mouth. And that's, you can just get tons of sodium and probably some carbs in there as well too. So anyway, Coke and potato chips, I'm huge on.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's almost like a gel. It's like, how do you turn potato chips into a gel? Is you crush them up. So it's
Yeah,
perfect.
so good. As we've talked about, yeah, bring more nutrition than you'll think you'll need. Again, I ended with the day with a lot more nutrition. I brought a lot more than I needed because I kind of, again, I went to Coke and other things as well too. But again, you're not this metabolic robot, so things are going to change the day, and there's many reasons why your taste buds change, heat, and whatever it is, just exhaustion. But it just, like you say, have a plan, bring more than you need, have options. And I think about 200, 100, there's a general store. On the website, they say, oh, there's a couple of general stores here and there. For God's sakes, there's a general store every 10 miles in Vermont. I mean, there's so many options. So you just stop and do this thing. So you may not have cell coverage, but most of the day, but you will have a general store. So interesting thing on the nutrition part is, like, I was doing more gels towards the end of the day, which is unusual for me, and fewer solids. Again, I love Nature's Bakery fig bars, but boy, towards the end of the day, I wanted Coke and I wanted gels. And so anyway, next time I will bring more gels. I had less gels this time, and also caffeinated gels. Those also give you a little pop as well too. And we've talked about this before. Is like, how much does caffeine in gels help your central nervous system? You're getting really tired. This even the heat all day long, your eyes start to close. I don't know. I think it turns out between Coke and caffeinated gels, that works pretty well. So shout out to those as well.
My quick question on that though is how'd you sleep the night after this thing?
Well, I'll tell you how I slept like crap, but it probably wasn't related to the Coke and the caffeine. That's another story I'll get into in a little minute here. So mindset and strategy, a big part of it here for any, long, big day. So I think I started telling myself really early in the day was to just never be in a hurry. Like, just try to be in the moment. And I know it's hard because you're just facing a big day, right? On Ironman, you're facing just a really big day. It's so hard to be like, hey, I am here right now. And so part of what I kept saying to myself was like, what can I do? What are my intentions like right now? And what can I do the best within this hour? Because you're going to get a lot of hours, right? And the hours seem to start to go by pretty quickly. So I just said, okay, what is it that I can do right now? Like, what am I trying to achieve right now? A lot of times I was like around pacing, so I was sort of keeping the eye on my heart rate, sort of keeping an eye on my watts, just sort of keep, again, like, can I maintain this pace for the next 12 hours, right? And if the answer was no, okay, we're going to pull back. So I think we did a good job with that. But again, I had to remind myself just really early in the morning, you're starting at 5 o'clock in the morning, and say, okay, I cannot be in a hurry. I really just have to settle in really quickly, and don't let the brain project down the road. Like, what's it going to be like in 5 hours from now or 6 hours from now? Like, or how can I do it? Right. I found that really hard, but I found that the quicker I got there, the more settled I was.
That reminds me actually of an insight I've talked about with Elena a couple times, of the mindset trick of saying, is this thought helping my performance? And like, what's it going to be like in 5 hours? Not helping your performance right now, but thinking about a strategy thing for like, okay, where's my next fuel, or how am I going to plan for that? Or how can I change my effort in the moment? That probably is helping your performance.
Yep. Exactly right. One thing I had to avoid was checking my data too often, right? Like, I do want to check in and see, okay, how's my heart rate doing? I refuse to look at average speed or normalized power, any of these things I sort of sometimes look at. I was like, hey, don't look at the data, don't look at the time. And I also didn't have mileage up as well too. It's like, don't look at any of that, because it doesn't really matter. Like, the average speed or the watts, it's going to be what it's going to be. I have to come back to, can I, maintain a level of effort for, the next 12 hours. And all the data, the average speeds, the average watts, all this other stuff, that's all downstream from me. It's just the result of that. But I can't do anything to affect that. But as somebody who likes data and enjoys data, and I often look at data a lot, like at intervals and stuff, and it's fun to look at, I had just kept sort of like saying, okay, don't look at the screen, or just briefly look at it and just be like, okay, good, got it, check, great. Mostly I was writing more on heart rate. And it's interesting, was my heart rate was kind of jacked from the beginning, and it was cool and everything, but it was kind of a race day, right? And my heart rate was up 10, 20 beats early in the morning. And I was always surprised. I'm like, wait a minute, like, what's going on here? But then I realized it's just race day. We always talk about this all the time, right? You get to transition, or you're sitting there before the swim and you go, oh, I'm at heart rate 125 and I haven't even started my race yet. So I experienced all of that. So that was kind of cool. And then I think the other thing was, what you do in the first half really sets the tone for the second half. And again, this is really relevant for, I think, really for almost any race, really, but even just a 5K race or Olympic race and beyond for triathlon, is that what you do and how you pace it and how you act is really going to have an effect on that second part. And I think one thing that, especially for these longer races, and this is, Katie, when I get your opinion on this, is that, for this particular ride, we got to mile 135 and then really the bike ride started, right? It got really hard in southern Vermont and really hilly. Before that, so just were rolling hills, ramps. We had a tailwind, a beautiful day, and then there's a big climb at mile 135, 3 mile climb, and then it just starts a series of smaller climbs and then more bigger climbs. And so mile 135 to 190, there's a ton of work. And so this idea of like, what can I do to get to more than, I guess time-wise halfway through my day or mileage-wise halfway through my day, but yet I have to arrive, like, for example, like you have to arrive in T2 in an Ironman with maybe 50% of your energy still available to you, right? Like you've done like 2/3 of the race, right? Supposedly, but there's still so much of a big ask in that last part of the race. So just, how do you hold back, hold back, hold back, hold back, and get ridiculously far down the road? Like I thought at 135, mile 135, oh, we're getting real close. We're getting real close to this thing. We're gonna nail this thing. It just turns out like that was not even the halfway point in the race, and it got really slow. So anyway, it was a good lesson, and you're like, okay, wow, I'm really glad that we were patient early on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the Ironman context, it's like the race doesn't really start until the back half of the marathon, which is crazy. I mean, you're in mile 80 of the bike and you feel really, really bad. And you're like, oh, like, how am I going to get through this? But the other point to drive home here is that you will hit low points kind of throughout any big day like this, but they will not be forever for the most part. And I think when you hit a low point or when you enter the pain cave, it's really easy to get locked in and say it can only get worse from here. But know that it might not actually. Maybe you just literally need to take a gel or get some Coke or stop for a minute and just have a little bit of a mental reset. But preparing yourself for, I am going to hit those low points and I might hit them a lot earlier than I want to, knowing that that's not necessarily the end, I think is probably pretty important if that was your experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I started off and it was a great day. It was cool. Felt pretty well bike fit, but I honestly, I didn't feel that great at the beginning of the day. And that's kind of like, this is kind of weird. And then around hour 6, I felt pretty nauseous. Like, I don't feel well. I think I might throw up. Like, oh, this feels horrible. So I hit that at hour 6, and I thought, oh, this day's over. Like, this is just gonna be a really bad day, or what's gonna happen, right? So I really struggled from hour 6 and 7, just feeling terrible. And part of that was related to we got into a headwind. It was a big climb out of Killington, that kind of thing. But anyway, I felt terrible. I just felt awful. And it turns out that at hour 8, I felt fantastic. I couldn't believe it was like this. It was this complete turnaround. And I don't know how to explain that, what the body is doing. And probably it was sugar. Probably it was we stopped and got a Coke at one point early on. After that, just took a little break, just got off the bike a little bit, right? So mental reset, physical reset, some metabolic reset. And then I felt fantastic. And I felt really good almost the rest of the day. Started getting lower energy, of course, but nausea went away, which I just felt was, again, but I tend to start to narrate like, oh, my day's over. And it's not. And I don't remember myself that.
And this also speaks to an insight that we bring up a lot, which is don't write the narrative of the workout before it's happened. Like, it's so easy. And I've been there too, where, like, yeah, it was a great day until mile 135 and then shit hit the fan. And then it was a really tough day. And you start to actually end the story. But maybe the story is like, yeah, I felt bad for an hour and then I felt amazing. And just like you said here, I felt awesome from hour 8 on. So if you want to, you can write a narrative that's more positive, but don't write a bad narrative before it's actually happened.
Yep, exactly right. And so one thing I really like about some of these, just any big adventure, and again, this could be couched to 5K, right? But like go and do something bigger than what you normally would do. Like set some sort of audacious goal and just kind of go for it. And I just what I like about that is this is reset now, right? And so for me, like, doing 200 miles, I look at now going a century, going like, well, a century is still a hard ride, right? It's a long ways to go. But I just did 200. Like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing. So it's fun to sort of get these resets, and I think that does really stay with you, right? And as a endurance athlete, if you set up a couple of these things, I don't know, once a year or once every couple of years, and do something just really, really big, it really helps. I think just really mature you as an endurance athlete and helps you just reset what you think is possible for yourself. And sometimes you look back and go, I can't believe I did that. That's incredible. But now you start to think, okay, now what else? Like today I had this thought, like, how far could I ride in 24 hours? And it's the first, it's a horrible thought. But if I thought, yeah, but I just rode 200 miles. Like, I don't know, what would it be like to like just try to ride for 24 hours like that? Again, totally awful. But like I'm having these thoughts, and I'm also having these thoughts like I want to go back and do this again, but south and north because it's harder in the south. So anyway, at first I thought I'm never going to do this again. I finished. No, never going to do this ever again. But now I'm thinking about, okay, what other stupid thing can I do?
I love that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about big adventures is usually within like 48 hours, it's fueled an even bigger adventure idea or like the same adventure, but better and harder in a bigger way. So that's always really fun. Next, you'll do this in the winter. It's going to be a winter 200 and 100.
Well, Ted King, I don't know if some of you know, but Ted King is a professional cyclist he lives in Vermont now. He has a YouTube channel, very famous YouTube channel. He did 200 and 100 on January 1st a couple years ago. And so that leads me to the next, that's a great segue to the next point, which was, if you look up 200 and 100 on Strava, you will find Ted King's route for 200 and 100. And we followed Ted King's route all the way to southern Vermont. And in southern Vermont, there's a couple of different ways you can go to the Mass border. Ted went the hard way. He went uphill. We decided to stick with the 200 and 100 official route, which ends with 5 miles along a nice river to the Mass border. And so the friend I did it with, Julie Smith, friend of the pod, she had Ted King's up on her Garmin, and I had the 200 and 100 official one on my phone. And so I had my phone tucked away all day, really nice. But at the end of the day, you have to do a series of left and rights. So I pulled my phone out and I put it in my bento box, which is on my top tube. And my bento box is not that secure and not that deep. And so at the end of the day, a hard from the end, I hit a bump and my phone went flying off into some deep ravine somewhere. So at 201 miles, I found myself on a side bank pawing through poison ivy and ferns and mud and culverts and ravines, and could not find my phone and had all my credit cards in it. And it was a horrible way to finish this thing. But luckily, we had gone 201 miles and 200. So like, check, the day was done. We didn't get a chance to go. It's actually 208 miles if you think. So you asked me how I slept the night after the race. Not well, because then we drove home, got home at 10 o'clock at night. I laid awake all night being so angry at myself for blowing it and losing my phone with all my credit cards and my real ID. So I got up the next morning, phoned a friend, said, hey, do you have a metal detector? He said, yes. Drove to his house. We drove back. Shout out to Carrie, my wife, who picked us up down in southern Vermont and drove back with me the next morning. And we spent another hour and a half on that bank with a metal detector, found every discarded beer can in the world. I went so far as I found credit cards from probably stolen wallets. I found other people's credit cards down the bank. I found 2 different persons that got the credit cards on the bank. Did not find my phone. The search area was like 100 feet and we never found it. And we kept searching everywhere. We searched the other side of the road. Never found it. This phone does not want to be watched. But after I got over my perfectionism, being angry at myself, I realized that people lose their phone every day. And you just go and you just get a new phone. And that's pretty simple. And replacing your cards, actually pretty simple. But the next day, I already had, 2 cards already available to myself. And your real ID, you just go on and log. So anyway, I was really disappointed in myself. And after I sort of stepped back and realized, like, wait a minute, this stuff just happens. And this is kind of a part of this is the story of the adventure, right? And it's going to be okay.
Wow, that is quite the ending. I mean, you're going to remember this day for a lot of reasons, but I feel like maybe the most for that reason. And I feel like we need to put out a challenge of the week to our listeners. It's going to transcend all other challenges of the week is if anyone can go and find this phone, we will give you a lifetime supply of Nature's Bakery fig bars delivered directly to your house. So go forth, find the phone. It sounds like you have a new phone, but honestly, just for a tap to do somewhere near the Mass border at the end of Vermont.
Right. I walked to my bank and they said, do you lose your phone? And they said, you're worried about it. I said, God bless anybody who can find this phone, because we looked for now. We have put a total of 2.5 hours of looking in this phone on our hands and knees to the thing, and it does not want to be found. So
I think if someone finds it, they've earned the right to drain your bank accounts and assume your identity forever.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Of course, you can take out my thing and go for it. Right? Exactly right. I'm off.
Gosh.
So yeah, great. So
that's awesome.
Anyway,
congrats, Jim. This is such a cool adventure. I think we're going to post some notes on the route and stuff if you're interested in doing it in our show notes. But this sounds awesome. I'm super inspired. I definitely have this on my bucket list for some point. Probably not how many miles can I ride in 24 hours, but if you do that, we would of course love to hear about it on the pod. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing your lesson.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So wow, we're going to go short, and now we're at an hour. Should we do challenge and your pick of the week?
Yes, I think honestly, we got the challenge of finding the phone. Let's push challenge to next time and jump right to gear in the interest of time and how long I want to spend editing this. My gear pick of the week is the New Wave swim buoy, which I think we've talked about many times, but never have been an official gear pick of the week. It is the best thing if you are worried about, I mean, in general, if you're open water swimming, you don't even have to be worried about safety in open water swimming, but it just trails behind you. It's super light. It won't interfere with your swim stroke at all. And you can hang on to it if you are, needing a little bit of rest in the middle of the open water. So definitely grab one of these. Boats can see you better. It's usually bright yellow or bright orange or bright pink, but highly recommend investing for any open water swimmers.
This is a mandatory thing. And it's great is you just get to lean over it and you can just chat away with your friends too when these things. So my gear pick of the week is more of a hack because I have a flat tire. When I get a flat tire on my bike, turns out that the rims that I have, it just seems like the tire welds itself to the side, the inner wall of the bike, and I cannot get them out. I don't have the thumb strength. And I've now seen this for a bunch of other people who have had flat tires. And so I found a hack and I put a link to a YouTube, but you basically just put a piece of wood on the tire and then you pull up on your rim and it pops it right off. And so it goes from like this maddening thing, like I'm stuck on the side of the road. I can't get my tire off. I can't change my tube because I can't get my tire unstuck from the sidewall. You can just step on it. You can find a stick. You can find a board, step on that tire, pull up on your rim and it pops it right off. So I wanted to pass it on to everybody. So it's not really gear pick of the week. It's kind of a hack of the week.
This is like a redneck Vermont gear pick of the week. Basically, it's like it's a piece of wood.
The piece of wood, exactly. It's a 2x4.
And it has to come from the state of Vermont for sure. It
Yes.
won't work if it's like Massachusetts piece of wood. They're just not strong enough.
No, it won't work. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been fun. We had literally double insights that we are now moving to another episode because we had so much to say. So stay tuned for the next one. Lots to say there. But good luck to everyone racing the next couple weeks, especially all the Placid people in the home stretch. We're super psyched for you. It's been fun to be a part of the journey. And yeah, I guess we'll probably see you on the other side.
Yeah, hit the smash button, like us, right?
Yes, like us, share us, do all these various things, rating, review, etc. And you can close it, Jim. What do we always say?
Okay, thanks, peeps.